Shintalmave boinde, trouw dich miseglaum, stud machusha jindach, edareioch gau. Homa vache daioch, Ishte maranke, Gani yu machadga, Edach raramut. Ayas kiuna mayan, Ayam nulachlu, Aynam nulerasan, Pikach varing plu. Nishin kyan lekadal, Uchte vodamöv, Stetan kuler krie, Uchte fiekön. Noades deire taches, Fati pertul, Noades kaischen jidach, Bitach lidir kun. Shinta vave vode, Glach kmitschau nedagarn, Trad ich miku jese, Ueter fiad mavea. O haid mi nu gut chdieme, Is kum in das gechau. O iered manam shulach truach, Agach evuan viam. O iesa hatoch diemev, Kjön kach gevach kan. Have this to spirit in yerun, Nyamish nyachka nirvran. O voden lischer kan hjälm, Huk kdies tuchten. Morach ich nicht bern amarav, Bin gdie gewach je. O iese faskal suestach di, Is jev me faskal gau. Hamanam skijegvad genvdi, Slepech gebranach faun. Hamai mi fortgeht jering taven guschen faun jaun. Haen chdiaun esioch magra, Hamas en gdischen fuhr. O iese hik gamiritra, Hafato varamatye. Hakafa karam kanji kanva, Avis mi halishimi fian. Viatiden jiunda gast, go fir harpes fir ulgediest. Ni moch die fakkens mame, slien vol moch ved manem die. Ach ma sanet ni gwanno, Jun han gomme saketius. Imiaran the malta, sounds a chalish imi fian. Viatiden jiunda gast, go fir harpes fir ulgediest. Ni moch die fakkens mame, slien vol moch ved manem die.
Bishop Hugh correctly said at the start of Mass that these stones could tell stories. And one of the highlights of the Camino de Santiago is the cathedral in Leon, where a large proportion of the cathedral is made from glass. And that stained glass also tells stories. When you enter through the main doors of the cathedral, you face east. And immediately you see a large stained glass window depicting Christ above the high altar. If you go in particularly early in the morning, remember we're talking about Spain, not Argyll, the sun is blazing. And so this image of Christ shines out on everyone who enters into the cathedral. As the day goes on, we know the south moves to the south side. And the south side, the wall is made of stained glass windows depicting hundreds and hundreds of saints. And as the sun moves round, it comes round from Christ and now illuminates all these saints, because during their lifetime, the saints allowed themselves to be penetrated by the light that is Christ's love, which transformed them and enabled them to be instruments of God's grace and love, so that out of them shone the love of Christ through their ministry, through their personality, bringing light and warmth into the world. And even many years later, when you go into the cathedral, you see the light of Christ moving into these saints, filling the saints, and then casting its beautiful colours onto those coming into the cathedral in the modern age. However beautiful an effect the windows of Leon Cathedral create, they were not designed through mere pious sentiment, but by reality, the reality that is Christ's transforming presence within people. And the truth of that, the reality of that, is borne out today, first of all, in our scriptures. Secondly, in the lives of the saints, including St. Columba, whose feast we celebrate today, 1,500 years after his birth. And thirdly, by our own personal experience. In our scriptures today, Isaiah teaches that God is present and active in the world. It is God who personally redeems, although God often chooses to work through people. We know that Jesus was the fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy, and that he was uniquely full of the Spirit. However, it is also true that disciples of every age, to the extent they allow the Holy Spirit to penetrate them and work in them, they will be transformed and continue the ministry of Jesus as instruments of God's love. Paul, in our second reading, was keenly aware that he had been called personally by God to spread the good news, which he describes as a transforming message of hope and a bringer of glory. However, this call to transformation, as we know, the call to perfection, is an extremely difficult challenge. Doesn't the rich man reject Christ's invitation as being too radical, too costly. Even Paul acknowledges the suffering that came from his fidelity to the mission he was given. Jesus himself insists that salvation is impossible except through the grace of God. Jesus promised Peter that those who live as God asks will experience reward now, even although its completion awaits us in heaven. Paul experienced the intimacy of Christ's presence within himself. And so the suffering that he endured precisely because he proclaimed the gospel actually became a source of joy for him. Paul is transformed by Christ, and through Paul, Christ's light will shine on many others right down to the present day. St. Columba is yet another example of someone transformed by the light of Christ's love. We know that even as a youth, he already loved Jesus and had genuine intentions of discipleship. After all, he lived the life of the monk. He gave up his wealth, his prestige. However, he still had to grow. His involvement in a battle, perhaps caused by pride, certainly caused a lot of suffering and caused scandal. But as he matured, Columba gave his entire life to God. In Celtic culture, family was everything, and he left behind his native land. The simplicity and hardship of the Celtic monastic life, the regular worship and study of the scriptures continually opened him up to the Lord, and he shared what he received. Mirroring Paul's words today, he offered formation in the Christian life. He dialogued with the pagans. He offered hospitality to all, and through the penitential system of Ireland, he reconciled sinners. But Iona's legacy is monumental, consistently impressive over several centuries. That can't surely just be down to one man. I believe there was something strongly attractive about Columba, because he inspired people to follow him who were so inflamed that they also passed on that message of Columba, the example of Columba. And so here in Iona and in its daughter monasteries all through this country, Northern England, Ireland, even further afield, we see people in successive generations generously embracing the Christian life. And it was that very continuous communal openness to God that allowed Iona and the Columba family to shine brightly and influence wide and far for many, many generations, and indeed still inspires today. Columba allowed the light of Christ to penetrate him and shine through him, a light many enjoyed, not only during his lifetime. But thirdly, what does all that mean for us? Celtic monasticism was greatly influenced by the desert monasticism coming to them through France. Many centuries later, the young French contemplative Saint Therese of Lisieux pondered which type of saint pleased God the most. And she concluded that it was irrelevant whether a saint had become famous or not. After all, she wrote, God only wanted one St. Francis. Francis only had to live the way God wanted him to do. God only wanted one St. Dominic. Dominic's challenge was to live the way God wanted him to. Likewise, God only wanted one St. Columba. Columba was to live the way God wanted him to do. What is important is we live as God asks us to. Each person is unique. Brothers and sisters, there is only one of you. God created each one of us differently. And you can bring God's grace into the world in a way no one else ever can. Today we celebrate the feast of our beloved St. Columba, 1,500 years since he was born. like the saints in Leon Cathedral, each one unique, each one still today reflecting the glory of Christ in their lives. Like Columba, let us also offer ourselves completely to God, so that through each one of us, the love of Christ in a unique way will shine through us into the lives of others.
Absolutely great. Everything was so different. The landscape, the people, the warmth of the people, not of the climate, of course. And this breathtaking celebration in this place. It's absolutely impressive what people of God could feel when they left their countries. They came here just to share what they have of most precious in their life. That was their faith in Jesus Christ. And I think we would be full of the same enthusiasm to do the same, and I'm pretty sure that people could not resist to the beauty of that message.
Anam chdiestem vich mi, achor chdiestes haval mi, ol chdiestes aich mi, ushkevav chdieste command mi. Afash chdieste nelstik mi, Jesevako kras vorishtum. Almat wachten van ich mi, na volit moskare woord. Vom mai chayni chesret mi, Atyud ma vaskede mi, Agus ort ich mi hinke deusi. Kuvi madledet noi vatort kloot, Vater, nan so